She stood at the grand oak doors, trembling. For years, Jade Harrington had dreamed of this moment, confronting the very man who shattered her life. Once, she begged him tearfully not to abandon her when she was pregnant. He walked out anyway, leaving her destitute and alone. Yet here she was, pressing the doorbell of his sprawling estate. No longer the naive girl he had left behind, now with twins in her arms. She was back, and the biggest shock wasn't her children. It was the billion-dollar fortune she now carried. Every secret, every betrayal, and every ounce of heartbreak was about to be unleashed. Jade Harrington could still remember the day she first met Carter McMillan. It was a Saturday evening in the heart of Manhattan. The neon lights bathed the bustling streets in a kaleidoscope of colors, and Jade had just stepped out of a half-empty subway car, clinging to her worn-out handbag. She was a newly graduated intern, hoping to make a name for herself in the competitive world of venture capital. Carter, on the other hand, was already a rising star, a budding millionaire who had doubled his wealth by making a series of astute investments in biotech startups. They locked eyes at a charity gala hosted in one of those glitzy penthouse ballrooms overlooking Central Park. Jade had been invited as an assistant to her boss. Carter was there as a prestigious donor. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and commanded the attention of everyone around him. She noticed how older executives leaned in to hear him speak, how even the waitstaff seemed to snap to attention when he so much as turned his head. At the time, Jade knew better than to expect more than a fleeting encounter. Guys like Carter dated supermodels, CEOs' daughters, or even starlets. But destiny had other plans. While scanning the silent auction tables, Jade accidentally knocked over a glass of champagne right onto Carter's pristine cufflinks. She was mortified, bracing for a reprimand. But instead of berating her, Carter merely smiled and helped her mop the spill with a linen napkin. That small act of kindness unlocked a conversation. By the end of the evening, they were huddled in the corner, talking about everything from Carter's philanthropic dreams to Jade's desire to start her own investment firm one day. He was charmed by her ambition. She was dazzled by his confidence. What began as a mere connection grew into a whirlwind affair. Carter would text her in the middle of the night, telling her about a new deal or venture. Jade found herself spending weekends in his penthouse where they would order takeout and talk about the future. She was convinced Carter was different from the usual arrogant financiers that roamed Wall Street. He seemed genuine, supportive, and oddly vulnerable. Then came the fateful night she discovered she was pregnant. She confided in Carter anxiously, waiting to see joy in his face, but his expression froze, turning to something she had never seen before: fear, or maybe even resentment. Over the next week, his calls became sporadic. The warm texts were replaced by curt, business-like responses. Jade felt him slipping away, and every time she attempted to meet him to discuss the pregnancy, he claimed to be too busy. The final straw came when she cornered him at his office. Jade, tears streaming down her cheeks, pleaded with him not to leave her in this condition. She couldn't even believe the words coming out of her own mouth. She had always prided herself on independence, on never needing a man for help. But she was desperate. Carter simply looked at her with cold detachment. "I can't do this," he said. "I'm not ready to be a father." And just like that, he turned and left. Jade was left in a sterile office hallway, pregnant and abandoned. The next day, he moved to Europe for a business expansion. The life she had carefully nurtured in her imagination, where Carter and she would raise a child together, collapsed in an instant. It was the last day Jade would see him for nearly 5 years. Hurt and angry, Jade spiraled into a state of despair. She had never felt so alone. Her own parents had passed away years ago, and her older brother lived halfway across the country in Seattle, struggling with his own financial woes. Jade had no one to turn to in Manhattan. Her friends were mostly colleagues with their own burdens, not exactly best equipped to support a pregnant woman who had just been deserted by a millionaire boyfriend. Jade's internship ended shortly after, and there was no job offer forthcoming. Carter's influence over the venture capital circles was significant. She wasn't sure if he had pulled strings, but it didn't matter. Nobody wanted the liability of an entry-level hire who was visibly pregnant. The stares and polite dismissals at interviews became routine. Her savings dwindled. Her anxiety rose, and soon she was sleeping on a friend's couch in a cramped Bronx apartment. Dark thoughts crept in. Jade wondered if she had made a mistake keeping the baby. Whenever these doubts surfaced, she'd place a gentle hand on her belly and feel an overwhelming sense of warmth. She might be broke, alone, and terrified, but she clung to the hope that her child, could somehow become the light in her life. As the months passed, Jade resorted to freelance consulting for small startups, helping with pitch decks, financial models, anything that could bring in a few hundred at a time. It was far from glamorous work. She'd work until midnight, dozing off at her laptop, then wake up nauseous and exhausted the following morning. She also tried to reach Carter a few times, but his phone was disconnected and emails went unanswered. Rumor had it he was setting up a new investment firm in London, partnered with a wealthy Middle Eastern royal family. The tabloids occasionally mentioned his name alongside European socialites and heiresses, which only deepened Jade's heartache. Though she felt a mix of anger and shame whenever she read about him, a tiny part of her still held on to the hope that he might return. Despite the emotional toll, Jade pressed on. She found a tiny sublet studio in Queens, barely large enough for a bed and a desk. But at least it was hers. Each day, she checked her bank balance, mentally calculating how much baby formula or diapers she could afford. Each night, she researched everything about newborn care, determined to be the best mother she could be. By her 7th month, Jade had saved a small sum, enough to cover a hospital delivery if complications didn't arise. She had no idea how she would manage after the baby arrived, but she refused to buckle under pressure. She began writing a business plan for a seed-stage investment advisory service targeted toward women entrepreneurs. A lofty goal, yes, but the project gave her a sliver of hope. If the world didn't want to give her a chance, perhaps she would build her own door and walk right through it. Then the night came. Her water broke earlier than expected. Panicked, she called a taxi to the hospital. Alone in the swirling chaos of bright fluorescent lights and anxious nurses, Jade fought through contractions. For over 12 hours, she labored without a partner by her side, except for a single friend who managed to drop by during her lunch break. Jade inhaled sharply, tears in her eyes, feeling anger, heartbreak, and an odd sense of resolve. In her darkest hour, as she gripped the hospital bed rails, it suddenly hit her. She was about to meet the person she had been fighting so hard for. This child, she promised herself, would never feel second best. No matter how dire her own circumstances, she would give her baby the life they deserved. Little did she know there would not be just one, but 2 tiny bundles crying for her attention within the next few hours. Jade's body shook with exhaustion as the doctors announced the arrival of not one, but 2 little miracles. Twin boys, perfect and healthy. The shock overwhelmed her. She had done several prenatal visits, but somehow the second baby had been missed in the early ultrasounds, perhaps overshadowed by a sibling or due to the subpar clinic equipment. It was a rare oversight, but not impossible. When she laid eyes on them, Jade felt an immediate, fierce love that dwarfed every worry about finances or heartbreak. She named them Oliver and Lucas, 2 tiny beings whose existence instantly became her reason to persist. Holding them in her arms, she wept with both terror at the added responsibilities and joy at the extraordinary gift of motherhood. The days that followed were a blur of diapers, breastfeeding, and sleepless nights. Jade's hospital bill ballooned, but she refused to let it crush her spirit. She negotiated payment plans, and the nurses who saw her struggle chipped in with advice about charity programs. It was humbling to accept help, but Jade swallowed her pride for her sons. Once discharged, she brought the twins back to the cramped studio. A friend donated a secondhand bassinet. Another offered gently used clothes. At first, just leaving the apartment to buy groceries felt impossible, especially with no car and 2 infants in tow. But gradually, Jade established a routine. She'd strap both of them to her chest in a double sling and shuffle down the street to the nearest bodega for milk and cereal. She found innovative ways to juggle parenting and remote work, continuing her freelance consulting whenever the boys napped. Word of Jade's perseverance began to spread among the small business owners she'd helped. One introduced her to a startup that was floundering. They needed a lifeline, someone who could craft a compelling pitch deck and prepare them for investor meetings. Jade took on the project. Despite the chaos of motherhood, she poured everything she had into the job, fueled by her children's soft coos and wide-eyed stares, reminding her of the future that depended on her success. Her determination soon paid off. The startup secured a seed round of funding from a group of angel investors who were, to Jade's surprise, connected to some larger venture capital networks. Impressed by her skill, they recommended her to other ventures needing consultancy. Within 6 months, Jade's name circulated quietly in New York's startup underbelly as the miracle pitch deck whisperer. Meanwhile, the resentment she harbored toward Carter continued to simmer. Late at night, when the twins were fast asleep, Jade would sometimes scroll through social media, stumbling upon photos of him at lavish events in Monaco or sipping champagne aboard private yachts with European elites. She wanted to hate him, but her heartbreak was complicated. A small part of her, perhaps buried under pride, longed for him to at least acknowledge Oliver and Lucas, if not for her sake, then for their children's sake. Yet with each passing day, Carter's betrayal became less of a wound and more of a driving force. If he wouldn't be there for them, Jade vowed she would become enough for her sons on her own. Every sleepless night, every meltdown, every unpaid bill she tackled it one step at a time. And with each small victory, she inched towards something she never believed possible. The idea that one day she might surpass Carter in both wealth and success. As Oliver and Lucas turned one, Jade found herself running on sheer determination. Her freelance gigs were increasing in value, each new client impressed by her portfolio of successful fundraising stories. Startups began courting her with equity offers in lieu of a full consultant's fee. At first, Jade hesitated. She desperately needed cash to support her household. But an older mentor, Marie Costa, who ran a women in tech incubator, advised her to consider partial equity deals. Jade, Marie said during a late-night phone call, "I've seen your pitch decks. You have an eye for opportunity. If you trust these startups enough, take a slice of the pie. It might be worth more in the long run." And so Jade did. One of her earliest partial equity deals was with a small medical device company that specialized in affordable prosthetics for low-income patients. The founder was an idealistic MIT grad who struggled to find the right investors. Jade polished the pitch, introduced the founder to philanthropic funds, and lo and behold, the company snagged $1 million seed round. Jade's share was small, but it was enough to keep her afloat for months and gave her a foot in the door of a potentially high-growth venture. This pattern repeated multiple times. Each time Jade took equity, she made sure the startup had not just a promising product, but also a leadership team that was passionate and competent. Her instincts were sharp, likely honed from the heartbreak and desperation she'd endured. She knew how to spot red flags from a mile away. Whenever she was uncertain, she tapped into the network she had slowly built, people like Marie or ex-colleagues from the days she interned in venture capital. Before long, Jade had accumulated a small but respectable portfolio. Outside of work, Jade's life was still far from glamorous. She was renting a 2-bedroom apartment now in a modest Queens neighborhood. The twins slept in matching cribs, close enough for them to babble to each other before drifting off. Jade subsisted on coffee, instant noodles, and occasional late-night pizza. But she never complained. Her children's sweet laughter fueled her, and her ambition soared higher every day. She immersed herself in the startup community. She attended networking events, sometimes bringing her toddlers when babysitters were unavailable. Far from hindering her, Oliver and Lucas often proved to be conversation starters, drawing empathy and admiration from founders and investors alike. That's when an unexpected invitation landed in her inbox, a pass to a high-level entrepreneur summit in San Francisco. Legendary names like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and Warren Buffett were rumored to be in attendance. The pass came courtesy of a grateful founder whose biotech idea Jade had helped her find. Despite her excitement, she was also petrified. Such an event was typically for the elite, not a single mom from Queens with no official company or brand behind her name. After agonizing over costs, Jade decided to go. She pulled her savings, found a dirt-cheap Airbnb, and purchased the cheapest flight possible with her meager points. She figured if nothing else, she could glean valuable insights, maybe even meet potential collaborators. It was time to see just how far her ambition could take her. In the back of her mind, a flicker of memory, Carter's scornful face reminded her that she had no safety net, no trust fund. If she succeeded, it would be on her own merit. And so, with cautious optimism, Jade packed her bags, kissed her twins goodbye, and embarked on a journey that would forever alter the course of her life. The summit was hosted in a gleaming convention center in downtown San Francisco. The atmosphere buzzed with creative energy and entrepreneurial zeal. Everywhere Jade turned, she saw booths showcasing groundbreaking technology, AI-driven medical diagnostics, solar-powered drones, blockchain-based solutions for global supply chains. The future was on display, and she was in the middle of it all. The sessions were enlightening. Jade scribbled pages of notes during keynotes from industry titans. She observed as Bill Gates politely navigated through a throng of entrepreneurs clamoring for his attention. She caught a glimpse of Elon Musk discussing space travel in a lively panel and overheard rumors of Warren Buffett possibly investing in an up-and-coming healthcare venture. For someone who'd only read about these figures in articles, the proximity was surreal. But Jade wasn't merely there to be starstruck. She had an agenda. Connect with founders who might need her services, network with VCs who could open doors, and ultimately position herself as a valuable resource in the startup ecosystem. To her delight, the skills she had honed over the last couple of years pitch deck consulting were in high demand. Many of these brilliant engineers and innovators struggled to translate their vision into a compelling business story. Jade could sense the opportunity crackle in the air. One afternoon, she slipped into a breakout session on funding breakthrough healthcare startups. The panel featured some well-known venture capitalists along with a lesser-known figure, Maxwell Durand, a mid-level partner at a prominent VC firm. She recognized him from LinkedIn. After the session ended, Jade approached Maxwell. She introduced herself, casually mentioning her work with early-stage medical device startups. Maxwell seemed intrigued and invited her to chat over coffee. During their conversation, Jade delivered a concise, confident summary of her contributions in helping startups secure funding. She spoke with passion about bridging the gap between visionary founders and the capital they needed. Maxwell's initial curiosity turned into genuine interest. By the end of their half-hour talk, he asked if she'd be open to partnering with his firm as a contractor to vet and prep their pipeline companies for investor presentations. Jade's heart leaped. This was the break she'd been working toward. A stable partnership with a legitimate VC firm could catapult her career. She agreed to an exploratory follow-up, exchanging contact details. Maxwell warned her that the firm would have to run background checks, confirm references, and possibly see her track record in depth. But Jade had nothing to hide and a growing portfolio to show. She was ready. Over the next 3 days, Jade found herself bouncing from one meeting to another, forging alliances with founders, exchanging business cards with investors, and soaking up knowledge from every session. When the summit ended, her phone was brimming with new contacts and LinkedIn invitations. Her mind reeled with opportunities that, if pursued correctly, could drastically change her and her son's lives. As she walked out of the convention center for the last time, the late afternoon sun bathing the city in a golden glow, she paused to reflect on her journey. 2 years ago, she was a desperate single mother, clinging to hope with nothing but her pride and unborn children to fuel her. Now she was returning home with genuine prospects and the faint promise of something more. A seat at the table among the very circles Carter had once graced without her. She didn't know how big these seeds might grow, but Jade did know one thing. She would water them with relentless devotion until they bore the fruit of her dreams. Life moved quickly when Jade returned to New York. True to his word, Maxwell arranged an introductory trial with his VC firm, Redwood Ventures. They sent Jade her first test client, a robotic startup that had incredible tech but struggled to tell a coherent story to investors. Jade spent weeks refining their pitch, reworking their financial models, and coaching the founder for a high-stakes demo day. The result was stellar. The startup secured a $3 million seed round, impressing Redwood's partners. Overnight, Jade went from freelance consultant to Redwood's go-to specialist for critical cases. They put her on a generous retainer, supplementing her existing equity deals. Suddenly, she was making more in a month than she once did in a year. With improved finances, Jade moved into a comfortable apartment in a family-friendly neighborhood. Oliver and Lucas were now toddlers, running around with the boundless energy that toddlers possess. She hired a part-time nanny, Helena, a warm-hearted woman who quickly became part of the family. Jade found herself balancing the adrenaline rush of work with the tender, chaotic joys of motherhood. Yet beneath this new stability, an unease stirred. She hadn't forgotten Carter McMillan. Not the betrayal, not the heartbreak, not even the fleeting warmth of his smile in those early days. If anything, her newfound success made her question whether she should track him down, not to beg, never again, but to inform him of the existence of his sons. The question haunted her. Did Oliver and Lucas have a right to know their father? The universe had its own way of forcing her hand. One morning, Jade received a cryptic email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read, "We need to talk, Carter." Her heart pounded as she opened it. The message was brief. "Jade, it's been too long. I'd like to meet and discuss a business proposition that may benefit us both. I'm in New York next week. Let's reconnect." CM. Shock, rage, curiosity, she felt it all at once. After ghosting her for years, after leaving her pregnant and alone, Carter had the gall to suggest a business proposition. A million questions swirled. Did he know about the twins? Had he returned because he felt guilty? Or was this purely about business? For days, Jade wrestled with the idea of replying. Every time she glanced at Oliver and Lucas playing in the living room, she remembered the agony Carter had put her through. But she also knew Carter's return to New York wasn't a coincidence. Whatever he wanted, it could be significant. And Jade wasn't about to ignore a potential advantage, especially if it could help her children. Eventually, she responded with a single line, "Sure, we can meet. Where and when?" She didn't allow emotions to slip into that brief reply. Yet, her heart hammered in her chest after hitting send. The next day, Carter replied, "The Soho Grand Hotel Lounge, 7 p.m. next Thursday." Jade had no idea what to expect. She tried to brace herself for every scenario: disappointment, anger, regret, or perhaps just closure. But one thought remained constant. She would walk into that hotel as a different woman. She was no longer the naive girl who had once begged him to stay. This time, Carter would face a formidable mother, businesswoman, and soon-to-be millionaire in her own right. Maybe he didn't know what he was getting into, or perhaps that was exactly what he wanted. The Soho Grand Hotel Lounge was chic and dimly lit. Jade arrived 5 minutes early, her posture erect, her hair swept into a sleek bun. She wore a tailored black dress and modest heels, an outfit that exuded confidence without screaming for attention. Inside, a jazz trio played softly, adding an air of understated luxury. Carter sat at a corner table, his silhouette partially obscured by shadows. When he saw her, he stood, flashing a tight-lipped smile. Jade's stomach churned with conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to storm out, to punish him for his past cruelty, but she forced herself to remain calm. She approached the table and extended her hand in a professional greeting. "Carter," she said coldly. "Jade." He gave her hand a gentle squeeze. For a moment, his eyes flickered with something akin to remorse. Or was that just her imagination? She sat opposite him, placing her purse on the seat beside her. A waiter arrived to take their orders. Jade asked for a sparkling water, Carter for a whiskey neat. The silence that stretched between them afterwards was thick with tension. "I heard you're making a name for yourself," Carter began, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "I see your name come up in certain circles. People say you have an uncanny skill with early-stage startups." "I'm doing well," Jade replied curtly. What about you? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Business is thriving in Europe. I'm back in New York to expand, and, well, I think I may need your expertise. Jade arched an eyebrow. You know, it would have been nice to have your support years ago, especially when She paused, her voice trembling as she recalled the day he left her sobbing in his office. She decided not to finish that sentence. She wouldn't gift him her pain all over again. Carter cleared his throat. I know I owe you an apology, Jade. What I did was cowardly. I should have been there. But that's the past. The past. As if heartbreak and abandonment could be summarized so neatly. Jade's chest tightened, but she refused to cry. Yes, it's the past and I've moved on. So why am I here? Carter exhaled, his gaze flicking away before refocusing on her. I'm launching a new venture fund focusing on biotech. I need someone who can handle the pipeline, evaluate prospects, tighten pitches, court the right investors. Word is you're the best at that. I'd like to bring you on board as a partner. A partner? Jade's breath caught. A million questions danced in her head. On one hand, this was exactly the kind of opportunity that could solidify her position in the venture capital world. On the other, working alongside the man who had abandoned her was almost unthinkable. She recognized this for what it was, an attempt to lure her professional talents. But was it also his attempt to rectify the past? She folded her arms. I have a steady partnership with Redwood Ventures, and, ironically, Redwood is probably a direct competitor to whatever you're cooking up. A flicker of annoyance crossed Carter's face. He downed the rest of his whiskey. I'm prepared to offer you something Redwood can't. Equity in the fund, plus a seat on the investment committee. He leaned forward. I'll compensate you well above market rates. I know you deserve it. Jade stared at him. He wanted to buy her expertise, but what about the twins? He hadn't so much as asked about her personal life. Did he even know about their existence? Her anger flared again, but she kept her face impassive. She took a moment to weigh the pros and cons. She could walk out, spurning the man who had once ripped her heart out, or she could seize this extraordinary chance to accelerate her career. But if she accepted, it meant facing Carter on a regular basis, forcing them to confront the ghosts of their past. I'll think about it, she finally said, rising to her feet. Send me the details. But let me be clear, Carter. This is purely business. I won't let personal history get in the way. Neither should you. He stood as well, perhaps a bit too quickly. His voice was measured. I understand. Thank you for hearing me out. Before Jade turned to leave, she hesitated. She considered telling him about Oliver and Lucas right then, but something held her back. She needed to be sure of his motives. If he truly wanted to make amends, she'd see it in his actions, not in empty words. So, she left him there in the half-lit lounge, wondering if she'd just made the biggest gamble of her life. Back at home, Jade couldn't shake the turmoil. She told herself that Carter's reappearance was merely a professional twist. Yet every fiber of her being pulsed with memories. She replayed that final moment in his office, how cold and merciless he had been. The idea of entering a business partnership with him seemed insane. But Redwood Ventures was no guarantee either. Yes, she had a great arrangement with them, but she was still a contractor at heart. Carter's offer dangled the promise of real power, a chance to shape an entire venture fund from the ground up. She cursed him for knowing exactly how to tempt her ambition. After a few restless nights, Jade finally confided in her mentor, Marie Costa. Over coffee at a trendy cafe, Jade laid out Carter's proposal, minus personal details. Marie listened intently, tapping a manicured fingernail on the ceramic cup. It sounds like a unique opportunity, Marie said, but your hesitation is palpable. Is there something deeper with this Carter guy? Jade swallowed. She'd never told Marie the full story of her children's father. She considered lying or deflecting, but her mentor deserved the truth. So Jade recounted everything. The romance, the pregnancy, the abandonment, everything except the twins' names and other deeply personal details. By the end, Marie's eyes shone with empathy. My God, Jade, I'm so sorry. That's tough. But remember, you're not the same woman he walked out on. I know, Jade whispered, tears threatening to escape. I can't let him hurt me or my children again. Marie rested a hand on Jade's. Your priority is the well-being of your family and your own mental health. But professionally, this is a golden ticket. Just be sure to negotiate from a place of strength. And if it ever feels too personal, walk away. You owe him nothing. Bolstered by Marie's advice, Jade decided to meet Carter again, but this time with a clear plan. If she were to join his venture fund, she'd demand terms that ensured her absolute independence. That same afternoon, Carter emailed her a formal proposal. She read it twice, impressed by the scope. The fund already had commitments of $200 million from Middle Eastern investors, and Carter was willing to assign Jade 5% equity in the fund's general partner Shepa, staggering sum. Negotiations took weeks, involving lawyers and late-night phone calls. Each time Jade encountered Carter, she kept their interactions clipped and professional. She never brought up the past, and he didn't push. Instead, he dazzled her with the fund's bright prospects, unveiling future expansions into Asia, Africa, and beyond. Despite herself, Jade felt the allure. At Redwood, she was important but replaceable. With Carter's fund, she'd be integral a co-founder in all but name. The potential payoff was astronomical. Her children's future would be secured 100 times over. In one of their final negotiation sessions, Jade finally dropped a subtle hint about her personal life. I want a flexible schedule, she stated firmly. I have dependents. Carter nodded, ignoring the curiosity flickering in his eyes. That's not a problem. You'll have full autonomy in how you manage your time. Results matter more to me than butts and seats. When the final documents were signed, Jade felt a strange mixture of victory and dread. She had secured a bulletproof contract. Not only the 5% equity, but also a guaranteed salary that dwarfed her earnings at Redwood, and the freedom to continue her own private investments on the side. Carter never once questioned her motherly obligations, clearly too focused on harnessing her talents to care. And so began one of the most precarious alliances in the venture capital world. The single mother from Queens partnered with the very man who had once abandoned her and their unborn child. Neither of them knew that fate was about to unveil secrets that would catapult them into a maelstrom of public scrutiny, heartbreak, and unimaginable fortune. Within 6 months of launching Macmillan Harrington Ventures, an awkward name Jade insisted be shortened to MH Ventures. The fund was making waves. Their first series of investments focused on cutting-edge biotech firms, including a revolutionary gene-editing startup that snagged headlines in the Wall Street Journal after presenting breakthrough research on inherited diseases. Jade, with her uncanny knack for pitch storytelling, elevated each portfolio company's visibility. She became the new darling of the biotech VC sector, speaking at conferences and attracting media attention. Business reporters hailed her as the single mom powerhouse, though few knew the depth of that moniker's truth. Carter basked in the fund's success. Yet despite working closely with Jade, he remained somewhat guarded. Their conversations centered strictly on business. Personal small talk was minimal, almost non-existent. On the rare occasion that Carter teased her about having a life outside the office, Jade would respond with a wry smile and change the subject. She wasn't about to let him off the hook for the past, but she also wasn't ready to reveal the twins. Oliver and Lucas were now 4. Their days were filled with preschool routines, crayons, and counting games. They knew mommy was busy, but they also reveled in the new comforts, a spacious apartment, weekend trips to museums, and more time with Jade whenever she wasn't traveling for business. Every night, Jade tucked them in with a story, vowing silently that she'd never subject them to a father who couldn't love them wholeheartedly. Then everything changed when a journalist from a tech publication requested an in-depth piece on the meteoric rise of MH Ventures. The journalist interviewed Jade about her background, digging into her early days in New York, her freelance work, and eventually her personal motivations. Feeling more confident than ever, Jade spoke candidly about being a single mother, how it had driven her to succeed, how she balanced work with parenting. Yet she omitted the father's identity. She had no interest in turning her children into tabloid fodder. But the tech world was small, and gossip traveled fast. Soon, rumors circulated that Jade's children might be Carter's. The whispers grew louder when old colleagues from Jade's internship days recalled how close she and Carter had been. An anonymous tipster even claimed to have evidence of Jade's pregnancy around the time Carter abruptly left for Europe. Carter got wind of the rumors. One evening, he stormed into Jade's office after hours, his face thunderous. "Jade, are these rumors true? People are saying that I'm the father of your kids." Her heart hammered. She felt cornered. Finally, she gathered her composure. "They're your children, Carter," she said quietly. "Twins, Oliver and Lucas, and you abandoned us." A storm of shock and disbelief washed over Carter's features. He sat down heavily, burying his face in his hands. For a moment, Jade saw a flicker of genuine regret. "You never told me why?" he whispered. She bristled. "I tried. You walked away, and I decided to raise them on my own. I didn't need the pity or the heartbreak of forcing you to be involved." For a long time, neither spoke. Outside the glass walls of the office, the city lights glittered against the night sky. But inside, the air was thick with tension. Carter finally looked up, tears brimming in his eyes. "Jade, I want to see them. I want to make this right." Her anger surged. "Don't you dare pretend it's that simple. For years, Carter, they don't even know who you are." He slumped back, visibly shaken. "But I'm their father. I have a right to be part of their life." Jade stared him down, fury simmering. "You walked away from that right years ago. Earn it back if you can. Or better yet, stay away until I can trust you won't break their hearts the way you broke mine." She stood and grabbed her bag, leaving Carter in the darkened office, silent and haunted by a truth he could no longer ignore. Word about Carter's paternity spread like wildfire within MH Ventures. The entire staff walked on eggshells. Some were sympathetic to Jade, while others speculated about how this revelation might affect the fund's reputation. A single mother with twins fathered by the lead partner was a juicy storyline the press couldn't resist. Carter, for his part, tried to approach Jade outside of work, sending her texts, emails, even showing up unannounced at her apartment building. She refused to grant him an audience. She was too busy steering the ship at MH Ventures, fielding concerned inquiries from investors, and dealing with the media's sudden interest in her personal life. One Monday morning, she arrived at a scheduled board meeting with Redwood Ventures representatives who had taken an interest in co-investing alongside MH Ventures. She was prepared to discuss the pipeline of biotech startups. To her surprise, Carter was already there, seated at the head of the long conference table, flanked by Redwood execs. He was smiling tightly, but Jade recognized the tension in his posture. She slid into her seat, forced a polite greeting, and launched into her presentation. For half an hour, she spoke eloquently about market trends, potential returns, and the innovative companies that MH Ventures had in the pipeline. She saw Redwood's team nodding in approval, flipping through the glossy brochures she'd prepared. Then, just as she concluded, Redwood's lead partner cleared his throat. "Ms. Harrington, your track record is extremely impressive. We believe Redwood and MH Ventures can form a potent collaboration. However, with the swirl of media rumors, we need clarity. Is the leadership of MH Ventures stable enough to see these ventures through without personal conflicts interfering?" Jade forced a tight smile. "Our personal histories do not affect our professional commitments, I assure you." Carter leaned forward. "We have a strong working relationship, Redwood. The personal aspects are separate from the fund's mission and success." The Redwood partner still looked uncertain. "Perhaps we should finalize a strategic agreement where Jade handles all due diligence and pitch preparation, while Carter remains more on the capital-raising side, ensuring no overlap of responsibilities. This arrangement might help circumvent any potential internal conflict." Jade bristled. So Redwood wanted to reduce the risk of a meltdown by segregating their roles. She forced herself to remain calm, but Carter, to her surprise, took offense. With respect, Carter said, "MH Ventures has thrived precisely because Jade and I combine our skill sets. Compartmentalizing us like that undermines the synergy we've built." There was an audible tension in the room. Redwood's lawyers exchanged glances, aware that they'd touched a nerve. Jade spoke up, her tone crisp. What Carter says is correct. Our investment outcomes speak for themselves. I trust Redwood can see that results matter more than these rumors. After a tense silence, Redwood's team nodded. All right, let's proceed with the original plan, but remain vigilant about any concerns. We want this partnership to be a success. They moved on to logistical matters, finalizing the co-investment details. Yet Jade's mind churned. It was surreal to see Carter leaping to her defense. She still recalled that tearful day when he walked out and the nights she'd spent sobbing, pregnant, and alone. Now he seemed protective, almost contrite. When a meeting ended, Redwood's entourage filed out. Jade stood to gather her notes, trying to ignore Carter hovering behind her. Once they were alone, he asked quietly, "Can we talk?" She clenched her teeth. "I have nothing to say to you right now." He sighed. "I get that you hate me, but the Redwood fiasco is just the start. The media won't let this go. I want to make it up to you, show you that I can be a father to Oliver and Lucas." Jade spun around, eyes ablaze. "It's not about me hating you, Carter. It's about whether you're truly committed. Because if you let them down, if you vanish at the first sign of inconvenience, I will never forgive you." She grabbed her files and marched out, leaving him gazing after her with an expression that was equal parts sorrow and determination. Weeks passed, and MH Ventures hummed along with new deals, new expansions. Jade spent long nights on calls with global partners, forging alliances that would catapult the funds standing even higher. In a stroke of brilliant maneuvering, she landed a major biotech deal in Asia, forging ties with a Japanese pharmaceutical giant. That partnership alone was projected to be worth hundreds of millions in returns. Yet, her personal life teetered in limbo. Carter's earnest attempts to connect with Oliver and Lucas weighed heavily on Jade's mind. She longed to protect her boys from potential heartbreak. Yet, she couldn't ignore the paternal eagerness Carter was suddenly displaying. Was it genuine, or was it just guilt? In the end, after much internal wrestling, she decided to let Carter meet the twins on her terms. She arranged a small, neutral setting, a children's bookstore in Midtown that hosted weekly reading sessions. No paparazzi, no grand gestures. She didn't even tell the boys who Carter was. She just said they were going to meet a friend of Mommy's. Carter arrived early, wearing casual jeans and an awkwardly fitting polo shirt. He stood near the reading nook, scanning the crowd for Jade. When he saw her with the twins, he approached slowly, as if uncertain how to act. Oliver and Lucas clung to their mother at first, curious about the tall stranger with kind eyes. Carter crouched down, greeting them softly. Jade watched, her heart in her throat, as Carter pulled a small plush toy from behind his back. "I brought something for you guys," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Lucas grabbed the stuffed dinosaur, while Oliver looked up at Carter with wide eyes. The reading session began, and the four of them settled onto beanbags. A cheerful employee read a story about a heroic fish. Oliver and Lucas were enthralled. Jade and Carter were engrossed in a silent dance of tension and fragile hope. Jade couldn't help but notice Carter's genuine smiles, his gentle attempts to engage the twins in the story. There is no sign of the aloof, ruthless man who once dismissed her pleas. After the session, Carter offered to buy the boys some books. "Is that okay?" he asked Jade, almost shyly. She nodded, still wary, but willing to watch. The twins squealed excitedly, racing between shelves. When Carter bent down to help Oliver reach a book on whales, Jade felt a pang regret for the paternal moment her sons had missed, sorrow for the years they'd spent fatherless. Finally, they exited with a small bag of new books. The twins were all smiles, enthralled by Carter's presence. As they parted ways on the sidewalk, Carter knelt down again. "I hope I can see you two again soon," he said, ruffling their hair. They giggled. "You're fun," Lucas declared. Carter's eyes shone. Jade felt her defenses crack. For a split second, she saw a future where Carter might redeem himself, a father genuinely trying to make amends. But as the twins tugged her arms, eager to show her their new books, Jade shot Carter a pointed look. "We'll see," she said softly before shepherding Oliver and Lucas away. Carter stood there, hands in his pockets, watching them disappear into the busy city crowd. She told herself she was only doing what was best for the twins. But a seed of forgiveness had been planted, one she wasn't sure she wanted to nurture. Still, the unstoppable force of her maternal instincts and her business ambitions propelled her forward. She could handle this. She had to. Over the next year, MH Ventures soared to unimaginable heights. Their biotech portfolio scored a string of major wins, culminating in 2 public offerings that reaped massive returns. Jade's 5% equity in the fund became astronomically valuable. Her personal net worth soared into the realm of hundreds of millions, soon tipping into the billion-dollar mark as new rounds of funding poured in. Carter reveled in their success, but he remained focused on mending ties with Jade and the twins. Slowly, Jade let him enter their lives more. Bookstore visits, a few park outings, and eventually a cautious introduction at her home. He never pushed, always respecting Jade's boundaries, showing up consistently and building trust day by day. Investors and colleagues watched their evolving relationship with fascination. Where once the rumor mill had been vicious, it now turned into a tale of redemption. The father trying to atone for past mistakes, the mother forging a new path without letting personal grudges derail a thriving business empire. Internally, Jade still wrestled with resentment, but the walls she'd built around her heart were crumbling, brick by brick, under Carter's earnest persistence and the twins' growing affection for him. As MH Ventures prepared for its annual gala, an event to celebrate its meteoric rise, Jade found herself the centerpiece of media attention. Reporters clamored for interviews, enthralled by the story of a single mother turned billionaire. Even philanthropic circles reached out. Bill Gates' foundation invited her to speak at a global health summit about investing in medical innovations for developing nations. But one final twist awaited. Days before the gala, Carter summoned Jade and the board for an emergency meeting. He revealed that one of their biotech companies had made a groundbreaking cancer therapy discovery, an innovation that could save millions of lives. A major pharmaceutical conglomerate wanted to acquire the startup for a multi-billion-dollar deal, offering an astronomical sum for MH Ventures' equity stake. The potential payout would cement MH Ventures' position among the top funds in the world, and Jade's personal holdings would skyrocket. The room buzzed with excitement. Jade, scanning the term sheets, felt tears prick her eyes. This was a dream come true, a defining moment, proving that her sacrifices, her resilience, had all been worth it. She glanced at Carter, who was grinning at her from across the table, their eyes locked in a shared moment of triumph. Later that evening, Carter caught up with her before she left the office. "I'm so proud of you," he said softly. "None of this would have happened without your brilliance." Jade tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her heart fluttering. Maybe the anger she'd held on to so tightly had run its course. Maybe she could embrace this new chapter, not just for Oliver and Lucas, but for herself. "You've done your share, too," she replied, her voice gentle. Then, impulsively, she added, "The boys have been asking if you'll join us for their 5th birthday celebration next weekend." A flicker of surprise, followed by relief, crossed Carter's face. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." She nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. In that moment, Jade realized that she no longer saw Carter as the villain of her story, nor did she see herself as the victim. They were 2 complicated people navigating a second chance in business, in parenthood, and perhaps in something more. The MH Ventures annual gala was an event for the ages, held at the most opulent ballroom in New York. Jade arrived, a vision in an emerald green gown that shimmered with every step. She wasn't trembling this time. She was radiating confidence. Oliver and Lucas, looking dapper in tiny tuxedos, were with Helena, beaming with pride for their mother. Carter watched Jade enter, his heart swelling. He knew this was more than just a business celebration. When it was Carter's turn to speak, he addressed the room filled with investors, innovators, and industry titans. He spoke of the fund's incredible success, crediting the team, but then his voice softened and his gaze found Jade. "But the true architect of much of our success, the visionary who saw potential where others saw none, is Jade Harrington." Applause filled the room. She is not only a brilliant businesswoman, he continued, his voice thick with emotion, but the most resilient, compassionate, and inspiring woman I have ever known. Years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I walked away from her, and from the precious gift she carried. I live with that regret every day. He stepped down from the podium and walked towards Jade, a small velvet box appearing in his hand. The room fell into a hush. Jade, he knelt before her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. You have taught me the meaning of a second chance, of forgiveness, and of unconditional love. You are the mother of our beautiful sons, my brilliant partner, and the love of my life. Jade Harrington, you are the most incredible woman I know. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Jade's face as she nodded, a joyful sob escaping her. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Carter, I will. He slid a magnificent diamond ring onto her finger, and the room erupted in cheers and applause. Oliver and Lucas, sensing the monumental joy, rushed to their parents, wrapping their little arms around them. Their wedding was a beautiful, intimate affair, surrounded by close friends, family, and of course Marie Costa, who winked at Jade during the vows. They continued to build MH Ventures into an even greater force for good, funding innovations that changed the world. But their greatest venture, the one they cherished most, was their family. Jade, Carter, Oliver, and Lucas, a testament to the fact that even the deepest wounds can heal, and that love, when given a true second chance, can forge a future brighter than any billion-dollar fortune. Jade's journey was indeed no fairy tale, but it found its own happily ever after, built on resilience, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love. If you found Jade's story captivating, her trials, triumphs, and the power of redemption, please don't forget to hit the like button. Share this video with your friends and subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales of resilience and success. Let's spread inspiration one story at a time. Your support helps us bring more stories like Jade's to life.